In the history of British crime, few names inspire such revulsion and sorrow as Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, the so-called Moors murderers. Between 1963 and 1965, these two individuals lured and murdered 5 innocent children and teenagers, burying some of their bodies on the windswept Saddleworth Moor. This is the story of who they were, how they met, how they planned and carried out their horrific crimes, and how they were ultimately brought to justice. It's a tale of manipulation, cruelty, and devastating loss, but also of tireless investigation and the resilience of those left behind. Part 1. Who were Ian Brady and Myra Hindley? Ian Brady, the making of a killer. Ian Brady was born Ian Duncan Stewart in Glasgow on January 2nd, 1938. His unmarried mother struggled to raise him, and he was eventually sent to live with foster parents. A bright but troubled child, Brady was obsessed with control, domination, and later, violence. He was intelligent, but his behaviour was erratic. In his teenage years, Brady began reading books on philosophy, Nietzsche and de Sade, and was especially drawn to Hitler and Nazi ideology. He developed a fascination with power, cruelty and sadism. After a series of petty crimes in Scotland, he moved to Manchester in 1954, changing his name to Ian Brady. By the early 1960s, he was working as a stock clerk. Myra Hindley, the normal girl next door. Myra Hindley was born on July 23rd, 1942, in Crumpsall, Manchester. Raised in a working-class Catholic household, she experienced a rough upbringing, with reports of an alcoholic and sometimes violent father. Despite this, she was considered a quiet, ordinary girl. When she was 18, she began working at Millward's, the same office where Brady worked. By all accounts, Hindley was captivated by Brady. His intellect, his aloofness, and his strange reading habits. She fell under his spell, and their relationship quickly intensified into something dark and dangerous. Part 2. Descent into Darkness. Brady, with his controlling and manipulative personality, began shaping Hindley into his accomplice. He introduced her to Nazi propaganda, books on torture and sadism, and criminal philosophy. Over time, Myra not only accepted Brady's worldview, she became an active participant in it. Together they planned to commit the perfect murder. Their victims were always vulnerable, young people who trusted them. The crimes were not impulsive. They were meticulously planned and executed. Part 3. The Victims 1. Pauline Reed, age 16, disappeared on July 12, 1963 on her way to a dance. Hindley lured her into a van claiming she'd lost a glove on the moor. Brady followed on his motorcycle. Pauline was sexually assaulted and murdered. Her body was not found until 1987. 2. John Kilbride, aged 12, disappeared in November 1963, lured with the promise of a lift home and a bottle of sherry. Brady and Hindley took him to the moor, where he was assaulted and killed. His body was discovered in 1965. Despite countless searches and public appeals by his mother, Keith's body has never been found. Brady later admitted to killing him. 4. Leslie Ann Downey, aged 10. Taken from a fun fair on Boxing Day 1964. This murder was especially chilling. Leslie was tortured, photographed and recorded on audio tape, pleading for her life. Her body was buried on the moor and found in 1965. 5. Edward Evans, aged 17, killed in October 1965. This murder would ultimately lead to the pair's arrest. It was witnessed by Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith, who reported it to police. Part 4. The arrest and trial. David Smith, a young man married to Hindley's sister Maureen, had witnessed the murder of Edward Evans. Horrified, he called police. When officers arrived at the couple's house, they found Evans' body in a locked upstairs room. Further searches of their property, and eventually Saddleworth Moor, led to the discovery of partially buried bodies. Alongside them, a suitcase was recovered from a train station locker. Inside were photographs and, most chillingly, the audio tape of Leslie Ann Downey's final moments. Brady and Hindley were arrested in October 1965. Their trial began in April 1966 and was a national sensation. The jury was visibly shaken when the Leslie Ann Downey tape was played in court. Both were convicted. Ian Brady, guilty of all 3 murders, Evans, Downey, Kilbride. Myra Hindley, guilty of 2, Downey and Evans. They were both sentenced to life imprisonment. Part 5. Aftermath and later confessions. In the decades that followed, public hatred for the Moors murderers never waned. In prison, Hindley initially presented herself as reformed. She became a devout Catholic, studied literature, and campaigned for parole. Many believed this was an act, especially the families of her victims. In the 1980s, she began to admit her role in the earlier murders of Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett. Ian Brady, on the other hand, never expressed remorse. He remained cold, calculated and defiant, declaring himself a sadomasochist. He called the murders existential experiments. In 1985, he was declared criminally insane and sent to Ashworth Hospital, where he refused to cooperate with efforts to recover Keith Bennett's body. Part 6. Deaths and Legacy. Myra Hindley died in 2002 from a brain aneurysm after 36 years in prison. She was 60 years old. Ian Brady died in 2017 at the age of 79. He remained unapologetic until the end, taking the secret of Keith Bennett's burial site to his grave. The Moors murders left a deep scar on British society. For decades, they were synonymous with evil. The names Brady and Hindley becoming a cultural shorthand for pure, senseless cruelty. Their case changed how missing children cases were handled and inspired major police reforms. For the families of the victims, particularly Winnie Johnson, Keith Bennett's mother, the suffering never ended. She died in 2012, having spent nearly 50 years searching for her son's body, begging Brady to tell her where it was. The story of the Moors murderers is one of darkness, but it's also a story of endurance, of families who refused to be silenced, of investigators who never gave up, and of a society determined to never forget. It reminds us why justice matters, and why we must always protect the most vulnerable among us. If you found this deep dive informative, please consider subscribing to the channel for more true crime history and criminal psychology breakdowns.